So I'm chatting to the lovely Mary, who has been actually one of my inspirations for a long time. So it's a real joy and pleasure to chat to you, Mary. Thank you. So my first question is, how did you come into osteopathy?
Well, it was a very long journey and I didn't even realize I was making it. It was almost like a 10-year journey because I left school when I was 16 and had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I really did spend 10 years doing many, many other things. So I was an archaeologist and a printer, printed examination papers, and I worked for Guinness doing catering, and I worked in a flower shop, and everything was great. But after a while, it just was not very exciting anymore. And then by an amazing set of fortunate coincidences and divine intervention, I was looking after my grandmother who'd hurt her knee, and I thought I would learn massage to help her. And a lady suggested that instead I do osteopathy. And it really was like a bell ringing in my head. But the funny thing was that because I'd done so many other things by then, I knew what I didn't want to do. So it was like a process of elimination in reverse. So I knew I didn't want to work with machines, and I wanted to be able to work with my hands, and I wanted to be able to work where I didn't need language, so that I could have this skill, whatever it was, and do it anywhere in the world, and I wouldn't even need to be able to speak to anyone. And if you say that's my dream job, you wouldn't believe that job could exist, would you? But it does. It is. And I'm doing it. And I don't think anything is wasted. Nothing that I did in those 10 years was wasted. Especially the archaeology, obviously, because I used to dig up a lot of skeletons, so that was very handy. But everything was useful.
Absolutely. And so where did your pathway into osteopathy lead you?
When I'd started practicing.
Mm.
When I started, you've done 4 years at the BS. Well, I studied at the BSO, and I had learnt some cranial. I was very, very fortunate. I was taught by Martin Pascoe, which was a massive, massive inspiration. Somehow you have to take that leap. It's like a leap of faith, really, it was for me, to go from practicing structurally to practicing cranially. It was enormous, and I think you need somebody to really help you take that leap of faith, and he did. But anyway, I started practicing not working cranially, because I think that's too difficult actually on your own. And so I did a locum in Scotland working structurally, and it was for me it was so disappointing actually. And I know for a lot of people it would be fantastic, but for me there seemed to be something missing. And a lovely colleague friend of mine said, don't give up yet, you've done so much to be qualified. Go to Stuart Korth's children's clinic, which at that time was in Harley Street, and make a decision after that. And that was the next really, really big step on the journey, because working with Stuart and working in that environment and just seeing how miraculous osteopathy can be, just seeing miracles happen, children coming in who hadn't ever spoken and suddenly being able to speak. It's almost biblical, isn't it? So that was another. And then I was so grateful for this. Stuart asked me if I would come to work in his practice in Tunbridge Wells. So that was another massive, massive leap. And then I met Ian Wright there, and I also set up a little practice in my own house in London, and he and I started working together, and Maria Finocchi, and that's a big thing, to spend time with colleagues, teaching your, experiencing and experimenting and doing bad things with each other's systems and treating terrible hangovers. You learn a great deal. And working with each other, having a patient coming in and having one of us at each end and saying, well, I can feel. Obviously, you have to have a willing patient who doesn't mind two beginners chatting, talking over the top, but describing what they can feel. And that's really important, isn't it? To experience that. And then a little bit later, Maria and Ian went to one of Jim Jealous's courses, and they said, oh, Mary, you've got to go. So I did, and then we all did those phases. So that was and each of these things, it's like another realm opening out. And then more recently, a lovely colleague of mine, Mary Monroe, she and I were working at Christian's practice by this time in Wiltshire, and I had treated a horse rider, and she'd come back and she said, oh, I just came back really to tell you that I feel so much better. And what I'd done was I'd only done one treatment actually, because she came in as an emergency and she needed to be able to get on a plane to go to a big horse riding event. And so she came back and she said, my pelvis is so much better. And I said, oh, do you know what? Probably you ought to get your horse treated, because if your pelvis is different, the horse will be, you'll be riding it differently. And she said, oh, good. Can you come and treat my horse? And honestly, I don't know what happened to me. I said, yes. I don't know a thing about horses. or even how I would get to her. But fortunately, Mary does know a vast amount about horses. So we went off to this yard together and treated this horse. And yet again, another enormous experience. And we spent the next 8 years, every Thursday, going out and treating horses. And then we set up a little dog clinic. And it turns out, of course, that you can treat anything. You can treat babies and children and people and adults, but you can also treat dogs, horses. We treated a parrot, cat, rabbit. A rabbit got brought to the practice in a shopping basket. Oh, I treated a duck with vertigo. Oh, no. It had an ear problem. Anyway.
That's amazing. And so what currently inspires you in osteopathy? And
well, I have been hugely inspired by the whole corona outbreak. And I know that sounds probably a very strange thing to say, but in amongst all the dreadfulness and the suffering, I think there has been some really extraordinary things that have happened. And I think it was, I think this sense of stillness and peace that came across, certainly across the UK, and I'm sure in other parts of the world, just the stilling of this incredible busyness that we all seem to have been tied up in. As we gradually began to, things started slowing down and people weren't going to work and everyone was catching up with these massive sleep deficits that I think they'd all had, I started to realise that I thought I had a fairly normal pace to my life. And then I started to think, actually, that was a bit mad. That was like being a hamster on a wheel, going faster and faster and faster. And I didn't really realise until everything started to slow down. And my husband, who's an acupuncturist, he's much more measured than myself. And I was saying to him one day, oh, isn't this lovely? Because I wasn't going to work by then, and we were in the garden and the birds were singing. I was saying, isn't this lovely? And he said, welcome to my world. This is the pace I live at all the time. And I was thinking, it would actually be really good for us if we all, for me, the inspiration was that it was more the pace of the natural world. And I think when you're working biodynamically, you're working with the tide, which is the biggest inspiration. I mean, it is inspiration, isn't it? It's primary inspiration. And it's in the pace and tempo of the natural world. And somehow that corona, one of the effects of the whole corona pandemic was strangely to bring me, and I think many other people, into that tempo more of the natural world. Certainly the natural world seemed to benefit from it.
Indeed.
It was lovely hearing all those birds.
It was beautiful.
It was, wasn't it?
It was gorgeous. And so how do you envision sort of practicing in the future, Mary, or where do you see your direction post-corona? And
well, it's very interesting. You see, another great big inspiration from the corona thing is that I've put my toe in the water of working distantly. So as it turns out, not only can one work with different creatures, but it seems that you can work slightly from a distance. Well, I mean, you know that you don't have to have your hands on the person. You know, you don't have to have your hands on their head. You can work from their feet and still affect their head or lungs or whatever. And it turns out that you can be even further away than that. So that's what I've been doing a little bit of that. And of course that worked out perfectly because lots of people you just couldn't go and see physically. So I don't think they can take the place of each other, but it is a very interesting avenue that's opened up. And I've started even being able to work distantly with animals, you know, with some of the horses and the dogs that I couldn't get to see. They're quite open to it. I think possibly
I'm sure they are.
Horses have got such a vast kind of zone B. You know, it's the size of their field pretty much anyway.
Oh, it's so fabulous. Thank you, Mary. Well, I think it's so hard to compress everything into 10 minutes, but I think our time is probably up again.
Is it?
I think so.
It just flies by.
I know. And I think I'm just going to have to ask one more question, which I just love to ask everyone. But what is it that you love about osteopathy the most, if that's the correct question? That
I think it's that I could never get bored with it. How could you? It's brand new every day. It's brand new every person. And because of that, it's always inspiring, isn't it? Every single person that you see is your teacher. They are your inspiration. They're always showing you something completely new, completely different, and completely unexpected. And I remember Jim Jealous saying that every time he starts working with someone, whether he's seen them before or not is irrelevant, and he always says, let me see something brand new. Isn't that brilliant?
It's amazing.
So you could never get bored, could you?
No.
I think that's probably my favourite thing.
Yeah.
Oh, and of course, because I was just thinking that it's your favourite thing as well, because it's so lovely, because it makes you feel so great, as you're treating someone, because we're all one, really. It's like being treated yourself. So
yeah.
it's like having constant all day treatment. It's just, what a luxury. What's not to like?
Absolutely.
It was worth 10 years of being an archaeologist and a printer and all those other things to get to this.
That's so gorgeous. 10 years is a mere drop in the ocean.
It was nothing. It was worth every minute in hindsight.
Yeah.
At the time, it was a bit, oh, where's my life going? Now 10 years goes by in a flash.
Doesn't
I can't believe I've been qualified 30. I mean, my goodness. That's the other thing. It's a bit like being a goldfish, because every day is new. So, time doesn't seem to have so much of an impact.
Oh, thank you so much, Mary, for sharing your story. It's been lovely chatting to you, as always.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been an absolute joy.
Thank you.